Hi, I'm Will Rochfort. I am the artist of First Night, which is a painting of the opening night of Peter Pan in 1904, commissioned by the Arts of Imagination Foundation.
Okay, so I mean, kind of the first question that I had is, why do you love painting?
Oh, that's a big question. It's kind of the only thing I've ever done, really. I've always been creative. My whole life I've always drawn, and I've made models like I still do today. I grew up doing stop motion animation, and then I would do cartoons and comic books. And so painting was just kind of the natural progression of that. Painting came out of it. My drawing developed into always wanting to draw the figure and drawing faces and portraiture. And then painting was like the natural step. And I started playing with watercolors, and then I would do some acrylic work as well. But then when I was at university, I tried oils for the first time, and I fell in love, and it was like being struck by lightning. And that's how I haven't gone back. That's all I've wanted to do ever since is paint. And I find that oil painting is the best medium for me to create the style of work that I do, which is quite bold, colourful, hopefully impactful work. And I think oils give me the best base to be able to do that.
Yeah, that's interesting when you started talking about kind of doing your early work with models and things. I mean, do you consider yourself a storyteller? Because in a way you are. All of your works depict story in some way. You have a narrative focus.
Yeah, I do. I think there was a time when story was so important that I was focusing on it too much. The narrative was everything, and I would try and show every part of a story in one painting. And I still do that sometimes. Rockwell, who I love, it was the master of that. He could do a painting that showed you what happened before, what is happening at that moment, and what is going to happen after. He could do that brilliantly. And I try and do that sometimes, but these days I've kind of pulled back slightly in that I like to give the first chapter of a story. I like to give the viewer enough that they can say, okay, there's something going on here, but then I leave the rest to the viewer, to their interpretation. That's what I try and do. I did a painting of 3 women stood around a suitcase full of money, full of cash, and that was it. There was nothing else, and there was lots of details around them. But what I loved was people's interpretation of it. The things that they were getting from it, the stories they were getting from it, was all that I wanted. I wanted people just to have their own spin, their own take. And whilst I've given them that first little bit of the story.
Oh yeah, and I think it's so interesting. I mean, the arts of imagination is so much about how our interpretation of art is based on the story that we come.
Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Do you find that when people look at your paintings and they tell you what they see, do they sometimes see things that are like, I didn't intend that at all, but that's great.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Yeah, again, with that painting of the women with the money, the things people were coming up with was things I never even thought of ever. But so it's just about not trying to shove the story too much in people's faces. It's to say there is something happening here. And with opening night, this painting, I think it's clear that there is an element of Peter Pan. There is you can tell by looking at a hook on the stage, and there's enough there that there is the specifics, but there's enough that people can take away their own, choose the bits that they want to take away with them. And one of the biggest compliments I get quite often is when people say they wish they could live in the world of my paintings, which I love. I love that. And all my paintings, I think of them as existing in the same world. And so when people say I wish I could live there, I don't know, I feel like I've done something right.
Why do you think people think that way? I'm also intrigued. Well, that will lead me to another question, but why do you think people think that? Why do they want to live in your paintings?
I think because my paintings are always slightly heightened, and there's I always try and give a a sense of escapism in my work. I want people to look at it and just be taken away, even if it's just for a few minutes, just to escape whatever they're doing at that time. So I think if you can, when someone says they want to live in my paintings, it almost makes me feel like I've achieved that, because hopefully that the picture has brought a sense of calm. And so that's obviously somewhere that you would like to be.
It inspires their imagination in some way. And you know, why do you think people love your paintings? What is the thing about your paintings that draws people to your art?
I don't know. I don't think I'd like to say. I don't know. It's that escapism. I think I hope that there's an intrigue and there's enough going on in the pictures that it's just enough to draw people in, to draw you in, and to give you that escapism and that intrigue. And I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe they just think it would look nice with the sofa.
Well, I think one thing that's when you look at all of your work, Will, I mean, you draw people, and you draw people having an experience or a story. What has drawing people or painting people taught you about people?
I don't know. I don't know. I find that I try and paint people in the quieter moments, because I feel like a person can project so much when they're not posing. Even though my paintings are entirely staged, entirely posed, and everything's set up, and I build all the props, and I find the locations, and I've sketched it out 1,000 times to get the composition right, I always try and, on the day, just let people relax. You know, and I find, okay, I'll say to them, I want you to be over here, and I want you to be over there, and I want you to be doing this. And the first few shots, it's all quite staged and upright, but then slowly people start to relax, and that's where you capture something. That's where it is. So it's in the tiniest facial expressions or the tiniest gestures. Even just by giving them a tiny bit of guidance, they'll do it. Yeah, and I think that's it. That's what I'm trying to get. Or
and
sometimes,
what do you think that is?
I don't know.
I don't know. It's like a realness that you're looking for,
maybe
like a glimmer of sort of unscripted.
Yeah, I'm because my paintings are always heightened. There's always it's not completely naturalistic. There is always an element of this has been staged, and I like that, and I want to achieve that because it's always very lit and very structured. But you've got to have that element of looseness, of freedom, and I think there is a very human thing that comes through eventually. And it's so hard to describe, but I think, and I've never really thought about it before, but I think I know it when I see it. And I think, okay, that's it there. That's the one.
Yeah.
And that's my doorbell.
Well, I think it's interesting how when we look at paintings like First Night or any of your paintings, I think that what tends to draw us in is the subject matter, but that what sort of hooks us is the expression, that kind of cues us in maybe to the story, or just what are these people feeling, and that's always interesting to me. Even like the painting you were describing that you just did with the man and the woman who are, he's come home from work and there's something there. Yes, yeah, I love that. So the idea of this painting that I did very recently of a husband and wife, and the husband has been a bit naughty, and the wife knows, so he's come back. She's let him into the house. First time he's allowed back in, and the scene is of the two of them sat together on the sofa watching TV, and their two kids are on the floor, and it's a very, very idyllic scenario, very sort of classic all-American family, very Norman Rockwell feel in its composition as well, very warm, but there's just something going on under the surface, which is what really appealed to me. There's almost a darkness, there's an underlying theme there of there's something else going on here, and it's all in the expressions. The man's very upright, the wife is on the side and she's sort of glancing at him,
and it's all in that very subtle body language, and that's so intriguing to me. And I find also with other pictures as well, it is true that just through facial expression and gesture, you can guide the eye all around the picture, even in a really busy painting like this, just by having all the eyes in the painting. Everyone's looking at the same point. Everyone's pointing. Captain Hook is pointing with his hook. The faces and the hands and the eyes, they're all going towards Peter Pan, and so your eye will follow that. As the viewer, your eye will go where everyone is looking. And I'm so interested in that. You can also do it with colour, so there's like Peter Pan is in bright red, so you can draw your eye in through that. But just very, very subtle, just kind of very, what's the word? Very indiscreet facial expressions and gestures with hands. I find that you can tell a whole story, and you can guide the eye around the painting how you want people to look at it.
Yeah. It's directing.
It is.
It's like directing.
Yeah.
What was your favorite thing about doing this painting?
Oh, I actually think my favorite thing about this painting was setting it up. Was the staging of it, because
tell us a little how you do that.
Yeah, so my process is quite complicated and quite involved, but there is a simplicity to it all the way. So I start with sketches. So when I first I have an idea suggested to me, if it's a commission or if it's my own piece, I will just sit down and scribble a quick idea. And then I'll do a few of those, and it will build and it will grow, and I'll change things and add things and take things away. And then from there, I will do a more finished drawing, but again, all from my head, just to get an idea of where I want things to be in the painting. And then from there, once that's settled on and I'm happy, I will go about finding locations. I will find, if I need things like cars or motorbikes or animals or anything like that for a painting, I will go about finding those. I build props. So for this painting, I built the cannon. I built the cannon out of cardboard. I built sections of the pirate ship stage out of plywood. So I start to build all these things for it, and then I gather all the people that I want to be in the painting. So in this one, it was all my family basically. It's my children in the painting. But then that's my dad laying down on the stage. This is my little boy just there, sat in the front of row A, and then he's also here holding up his sword. And this is my friend Mike as Captain Hook, and that's his two children just there. So it's a real sort of friends and family affair. I get all the people that I love and that I know want to be in the painting. I ask them if they're free, and if they are, they come along. In the case of this picture, we hired a local theatre, and we had the run of the place for the whole day, which was amazing. And I worked with a brilliant photographer called Adam Link, and he comes with me to every single shoot, and he sets up the lighting. He knows the lighting that I like, and it sounds stupid, but he makes sure the camera is in focus. So I don't have to worry about that. I don't have to worry about am I going to get the images I need? Are they going to be sharp? Are they going to be lit well? Am I going to be able to see what I'm photographing? I don't have to worry about the technical side anymore, which was always such a stress for me. And all I have to worry about is directing the scene. So I have everyone there on the stage. I have my clipboard with my list of characters and where I want them all to be stood and what I want them to be doing. And I'll just go around and I'll speak to everybody. Rather than standing in front of the crowd and speaking to everyone, I'll go to each person individually and I'll chat to them. I say, this is what I think you're thinking at the moment, and what I want you to be doing. I want you to be stood like this. And like I said before, once I've given that direction, I then stand back and I allow them just to kind of loosen up a bit and just kind of get into it. Yeah. And sometimes they really give it their all, and sometimes they need a bit more, especially working with children. That was great fun, because I have done that, but not on this scale. And to get them really worked up, and get some energy out of them, that was really good. So I was stood there in front of the stage shouting at everyone, just trying to get them to do exactly what I needed. And then I take hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos. And then I'll come away from that and I will go through all the images and I'll choose the best one of my dad, the best one of my little boy, the best one of Mike, and I'll combine all of those elements into one composition. I'll do one final sketch and then I go from that. And that's when I start painting.
And you bring your story to the creation of the painting,
Yes.
which is interesting too.
Yes, yeah, I think so.
So much of you. There is so much of you literally in these paintings.
Yeah, I hope so. I really hope so. And yes, so with this one, I think it was, despite it being, it's stressful, but in the best way. Doing all the setup, doing all the work for it, all the sketches, all the planning, making sure everybody's in place, making sure everybody is going to turn up. Is the theatre going to be available when we need it? But when I'm there on the day and I've got everybody there and we're setting up the stage and it's all coming together, I feel like I'm in my element. I feel like I love that stage so much. And then of course I love the painting as well, but that's a very different thing. But especially on this one, I think it was
the setup.
The setup, yeah.
Talking about, was there, in terms of actual doing the painting, was there a section that was your favorite to do, or a character that was your favorite to do? Or
yeah, I loved painting the Lost Boys. Yeah, that was my favorite bit, I think, because there's so much character and so much, each one is different, every single pose is different. I loved painting the audience, but they're all looking the same way, all doing more or less the same thing. So as a whole, they work really nicely. But in the Lost Boys, individually, I think that was so much fun.
Now, if you had been in the painting, who would you be?
I'd be in the audience. I would, just watching.
Yeah, that's fun. What was the biggest challenge of doing this piece? It's a big...
Ooh, yeah. I think just when you're working on this scale, I think perspective and depth, that's always the biggest challenge for me. People, I love painting people so much. It's always a challenge, but it's one that I enjoy. So in terms of the biggest thing, I think it's just trying to get this much scale and perspective and get it to work and look right on a canvas this size.
Yeah. And what do you hope people take away from this painting? When people see it and look at it, what do you hope that their experience is?
Again, I hope I'm not just repeating myself, but it's escapism. I hope that people can look at it and be taken away by it. You know, just for a few minutes or a few hours, maybe, hopefully, but just to have, there's so much going on in there that every time you look at it, I think you'll see something different. And there's that story, there's the history, there's the making of the painting, there's so much involved in the whole thing that I just hope people will just be able to just lose themselves in it for a few moments and enjoy it.
Yeah. Why do you think art's important? Like, why do you think storytelling is important? Why, you certainly are having a moment as an artist and people are responding to your work. So, why do you think that is? Why is art?
Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. I think in terms of storytelling, I think it's essential. I think it always has been, from cave drawings to big Hollywood blockbusters. It's so important in a way that perhaps more than people even realise. And not all art is there to tell a story. Some art is there to give a message, make a statement, to evoke. I think all art is there to evoke an emotion, whether that emotion is anger or upset or joy and love or anything like that. I think it is all some form of storytelling. Very personal, not personal, political, not political. Again, I love movies, and I love the smallest movie which is telling such a small, tiny, intimate story. But I also love the biggest summer blockbuster superhero movie, because if it's done well, then it can be really great, and you can just lose yourself for a few hours. So on both ends of that scale, I think it's so important, but it has to be done well. And hopefully I'm doing my pictures well.
For you, what does that mean to do something well?
Oh, I think it has to, so for me personally, for my own pictures, I think to paint it well, so technically I like to say I've painted it well, but that's important, but it's also secondary. It has to be secondary to what the painting is about or what the painting is of. And so if I can do a painting that tells a story, brilliant, that's great. If I can do a painting that beyond all that, so storytelling, that works, I've achieved that, it's clear what is happening, technically it's painted well, brilliant, I'm happy with that. But I think composition is everything. Composition is so difficult. No matter what style of painting you do, abstract, realism, impressionism, all of it, if the composition is right, because the painting has to work on those terms, the painting has to work instantly like that. And I think if you get the composition right, then people will see it, and there's something that draws you in. You think, oh, I like that, but I don't know why I like that. And then perhaps when you look at it again, you say, oh, there's something going on here. Oh, what's it? Oh, there's a story. Oh, something's happening there. And then you look at it again, you say, oh, it's actually really nicely painted as well. So I think they have to work together, but number one is composition. And if I can get composition right, which I spend so long trying to do, then I think that's you're kind of doing yourself a huge favor, really. If you can get that right, everything else will follow. So for me, everything is composition.
Yeah. Well, speaking of composition, it's interesting because you played around with different, I think the idea was always that we hit upon it would be the audience watching the scene.
Yes.
But you played around with different vantage points and different perspectives, and I guess that would be different ways to do composition.
Yes.
And how did you settle on this, or what made you decide those weren't right?
Yeah, it's funny because when we first spoke, I could see it in my head straight away, and it was just from this angle, almost to the side of the stage, because I knew that would encompass. Because my first challenge was, how do you get? Because we had to get the faces of the audience, especially the children. Then you also had to get the people on the stage. So how do you show both of those things without losing one of them? And so the obvious answer was you pose it from the side. But then I also wanted to see quite far back onto the stage. So there's some artistic license that's taken place. And I think this just seemed, even from that very first conversation about this painting, I could see it in my head, and those first sketches kind of followed it. And then I did some sketches that changed, and they did come into the audience, so you lost the faces, and that didn't work, so scrap that idea, come back to the original shot. And then when we were at the location, at the theatre, I could really get a much better idea of, okay, this is where I'm going to have to position myself to be able to get everything that I need. And it just seemed like the best option. Sometimes I guess the most obvious is the best option. You can try and be clever with it. You can try and do some bizarre, crazy angle where you're looking down from above, which I'm sure would work really well. But I think usually, I always seem to stage my paintings face on to what is going on. I know here we're looking down from the side, but it is face on. It's not looking down from above. It's not looking up. It's face on. And so this was just kind of the best version of that, to be able to tell this story.
What did you learn what did you learn doing this painting? Whether it was about the subject matter, or about how you work, or about anything.
Oh wow, probably loads, absolutely loads. Yeah, I learned, obviously historically I learned loads about Peter Pan, the opening night. I learned about all the little intricacies of the uniforms, the costumes that they wore, the colours, Peter Pan being in red, which I didn't realise. I thought obviously Peter Pan was green, I think it was Disney that did that. I loved all those small details, and also this is one thing I did learn, because most of my pictures are set sort of 1960s kind of era, and so this one being 1904, I learned a lot about the things that people would wear, the different clothes they would wear to the theatre at a time like that. what the children would wear, different things like the lighting on the stage that I had to learn about that, but then technically painting it, again, it's just painting something on this scale. I think this is definitely the most complicated painting that I've ever worked on, and with so many faces and characters and people, and trying to achieve that lighting. You want that darkness in the background, but you don't want to lose the detail, so I'm trying to play around with that. The whole thing was a big learning curve. Every picture is. Every single time I do a new painting, I never start a painting thinking I've got this. I know what I'm doing here. Because if I do that, I know it will just fail. It will flop. So I always try and sometimes I'll start painting and I'll just pick up my brushes and go. And I have to stop myself and say, okay, I'm just going to take a step back, take a deep breath, think about what you're doing. And every picture is a challenge, but this one was more than most just because of all the little tiny details. And I remember when I first sketched it I sketched it onto the canvas in charcoal. I think I stood in front of the canvas for about an hour, just kind of overwhelmed by it, just thinking, where am I supposed to start on this? I have no idea. And so in the end, I just started at the back and worked my way forward. Just keep it simple. That's kind of my approach to everything. Just
keep it
as
simple.
much as possible.
Do you find that you have to have some entry point into the painting, whether it's the back wall or it's a face? Is it always different?
It tends to be. Start from the back.
So you're entering the world.
Yeah, I suppose so. I'm creating that world from the back or from a corner, and I'm just drawing it out slowly. And sometimes if there's a really great focal point, I'll work on that first. If there's a face I'm really desperate to do, I'll just paint that first. And if it comes out well, it almost gives you a boost to be able to try and make the rest of the painting match that and be as good as that first bit. But generally, no, I'll just start at the back and work forward. And it means that there's always a stage where the painting just looks a bit patchy and a bit, I'm not sure if this is working. But you just have to trust the process and just keep going and keep going. Slowly you add more and more details, and suddenly, there it is. And you keep going a little bit more.
Is that where you feel like your imagination is the biggest part of the process for you? Is at that point when you have to imagine? Is it imagining it from the conception, or is it imagining it when you're bringing the world into focus?
Yeah, I think that's it. When I'm bringing it into the focus, I think that's definitely it. Because obviously I've created it from the very beginning. It's my idea. I've sketched it. We've posed it. We've photographed it. I have all my references there that will get me to a certain point. But I never want to be a slave to the references. I never want that to be exactly what I'm doing. So I'll use them up to a point as a guide, and then there's always a part of the painting where I put them to one side, and I just go in with just tiny highlights and just extra color here and push that bit back there, just to lift it, just to heighten it. I think if you just go straight from one photo, you just copy it photo to painting, it's a bit static and it loses something. It doesn't have movement, it doesn't have life. So, because the paintings always have that halfway, there's always a stage where you think, this looks great, this is lovely, and you can go too far with it. So I'm always very careful to not have it just being a complete replication of a photo.
So it wouldn't have the life to it.
You want to have the life.
A painting of a photo.
No, exactly. Yeah, you've got to add something a bit more. So yeah, even if it is just touches of light. In this one, I went around all the people on the stage and I added just like a spray of white paint, almost like to give them a glow, because I just wanted them to have the magic, or it could be even pixie dust, or something like that.
Yeah.
Just to give them. It's very subtle, and I did take some of it away because it was too much, but it's just to heighten it, just a little bit.
I love that. Okay,
It's rolling.
We're rolling. Okay, and action.
Here we go. So obviously this is showing the opening night of Peter Pan, and at the Duke of York Theatre in London. And the most important thing from discussions was the children. That was kind of the focus, because you had to have the wonder in their faces. That's what everything on this side of the picture, it all relies on their reactions here, because I think what I learned was that especially the opening night, they invited children from the local orphanage to sit in the front row of the theatre, and in amongst the crowd as well, I think, but just to try and portray their reaction and their wonder at what is going on. Wow, seeing someone fly above the stage, that was the most important thing. So I got all of, like I said, my nieces and nephews and children of friends of mine. So this is my little boy Tobias here. It's my nephew Eddie, my George and Joey, Thomas, and I don't know the names of these people, but they were friends of ours, and they brought their children, and they were great. So we got them to sit in the front stage, in the front row of the stage, and we just did take after take after take, just trying to get that amazement in their faces, and especially with this guy here just holding his hand up as if he's trying to reach for Peter Pan. So that was the most important thing. And then in the background that we only had about 9 or 10 people show up for the crowd, for the audience, and so we posed them, and then we photographed them, and then we moved them, photographed them again, moved them, photographed them again, until they slowly filled all the seats. And then I combined all those images to make it look like the theatre was full. And again up here as well, where everyone's up in the top of the stage, or these seating up here, that's all the same people. We moved them up there and re-photographed them, and I painted over them to push them back, so they're kind of pushing into darkness. Then you have this one little boy just here, who's just kind of taking it all in.
Yeah,
you know,
I love that.
His face is as lit up as everybody down here, but he's on his own up there.
Oh, I love that.
So, and then on the stage, this is my dad. This is my friend Mike. This is Mike's children posing as some of the Lost Boys. This is my niece Annabelle. She's posing as Peter Pan, because Peter Pan was played by a girl. This is Eddie again, so he's popped up twice. My little boy just there on the end. Another one of my nephews. And this is our friend Andy on the stage. And so again, it was that I did actually have a reference point of I think it was one of the posters made for the original performance, where the pirates were defeated by the Lost Boys, and Peter Pan was flying in to save the day, and I used it as a kind of guide to have my dad knocked out and Andy on the stage there. And so there was a reference point, there was a guide to follow, but like I say again, it was very much on the day, get them to stand where I want them to stand, but then allow some movement and some play as well. All the Lost Boys would have been played by girls, but also would have been played by adult women. And we thought that, whereas that would have worked historically, would have been good to be historically accurate, I think it would have confused things too much. I think it would have brought up too many questions that would have distracted from the painting. And so bringing in actual children to play those roles seems to just work much better.
Yeah.
It was much, much smoother, and it suited what was going on.
Gives it a different energy to it.
Yeah, it definitely gives a different energy to it. I think it would have just been distracting otherwise.
Yeah, it gives it that, we wanted that kind of playful,
yes,
of the children,
yes,
that energy, I think.
Yes.
Say something like that.
That is true, yeah. And we wanted that playful energy that the children would bring, just to the whole thing, that perhaps having adults there dressed as Lost Boys, it might not have worked. I'm sure it would have been great. The adults all dressed as pirates had a great time, but I think having children on stage, you get that energy.
Yeah. Did the kids have fun staging the painting?
They had great fun. They loved it. I think they were when they first walked into the theatre, they were a bit overwhelmed and a bit sort of shy and not sure. But once they got on the stage and they were dressed up as the Lost Boys, and you put a sword in a little boy's hand, he'll give you everything. It's great. Yeah. So they were absolutely brilliant. And I had Joey up on this barrel here, so he was having a great time.
Did they all know the Peter Pan story?
They loosely, yeah. I think insofar as they know Peter Pan from the Disney movie of its, that he can fly and but do they know much? I don't know. Maybe they don't actually, but know much about the Lost Boys, and I think they all know Captain Hook.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I'm not sure.
It's hard to say.
Sure.
What was it like for your niece playing Peter Pan? Did she have any knowledge that Peter Pan was usually played by a girl?
So my niece, Annabelle, who played Peter Pan, she didn't have any knowledge that Peter Pan was played by a girl. So I think she was a bit confused. And she wasn't there on the day. she came, we photographed her separately in a different studio where we had her up on a table jumping up in the air to try and get that movement of as if someone was flying, and she was absolutely brilliant. She was just in a white t-shirt, and she looks quite a bit different because I changed her to look a little bit more accurate to the actress who was playing her.
Nina Bosico was her name.
To Nina Bosico in the original play. But Annabelle was absolutely brilliant. She was great fun. So that was a nice detail to put in up there. And then this man just here in the corner, he was a detail that I wanted to put in there. Just because you almost like a counterpart, because you have all this wonder, you have all this amazement in these people's faces and the children's faces. You have all this activity and excitement going on the stage, and I think I just quite like the idea of giving a counter to that. So there's this man who's probably seen this rehearsed 1,000 times, has lost interest completely, and so he's just fallen asleep at the side of stage in the shadows. But what he has next to him, what his job is, he's got this bell, which on the label next to it you can see says Tink, because obviously back then, 1904, Tinkerbell was portrayed by someone ringing a bell.